Hi, my name's Dr. Colin Robertson. I'm an exercise and nutrition scientist and accredited strength and conditioning coach. And I've been working really in the high performance area for 25, 26 years now. Everything from working within a club setting in football and rugby, both rugby league and rugby union, all the way through to helping cyclists take part in the Tour de France. And I'm an environmental physiologist, so I've helped multiple people train to take on things like summiting on Everest, rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, taking part in the Marathon des Sables. And actually, because of that environmental physiology background, times when other more typical sports are going to travel around the world to participate in things like the Olympic Games, international competitions, people like me get brought in and involved to help with time of day specific training, adaptation, nutrition programs, dealing with jet lag. So everything from being the guy on the gym floor, helping to put weight on bars, telling athletes how to train to get fitter, faster, stronger, structuring how they eat prior to and in the wake of those training experiences, all the way through to walking out on the pitch. A real highlight for me was 2008 in Australia in the Rugby League World Cup, and I was very proudly the S&C head of performance for the Ireland team. And we were put in what was called the group of death. So the idea was that Ireland were never going to make it past the group stages. We had a very different attitude about it, and our sole focus was to qualify and get to the quarterfinals. And we did. And it was a real passion play of a game that played out. And still, despite all the things that I've done since then, and prior to it, that's a real highlight for me. One of the reasons is it was Ireland. Another reason is that was one of those team experiences and opportunities where I controlled everything from the point of view of the strength and conditioning to the recovery, the rehab, and all the nutrition. So it was a rare opportunity that you get to apply all aspects of your trade with a group of athletes. So really now what I function as is a knowledge broker. So a lot of people who are working within those disciplines, within those fields, will reach out for me to get evidence-based information. So what's the best way to do something? And much of that really focuses on nutrition now, because we've got a breadth of outstanding S&C coaches working all over the world. We've got a breadth of outstanding nutritionists working all over the world. But in all instances, people look not just for reassurance, but for that extra bit. What makes the difference? What puts you ahead? What's novel? What's newly emerging? And these are busy roles. These are really busy roles. People spend a lot of time in the trenches working on the day-to-day. So they need to have go-to people that they can bring in, who they can kind of tag team in and rely on and say, right, how can we reevaluate? What things are we not considering? And what could we therefore perhaps be doing better? And that's a real privileged position that I found myself being in for the past 10 years, really, is supporting those support teams, working across a range of sports, everything from working with certain aspects of Team GB, so preparing athletes who are going to go out to the Olympics, to remaining involved in people who are taking on crazy challenges all around the world, like summiting the highest mountains in the world, to rowing across oceans, swimming across the Gibraltar Straits, all these crazy things that people like to do. It's a real grassroots stuff. So helping clubs to find their feet, how to do things well and be more pro in how they approach the development of their athletes. What's been important to me, and maybe on reflection, what's really not made me unique, but kind of set me apart a little bit, is that my first and foremost consideration has always been the health and wellness of the athlete. Of course, we're measured by performance and we're measured by results, but I've never once, I'm very proud to say, been prepared to make a compromise on the wellness and the health and the resilience and robustness of the athlete or group of athletes in the pursuit of that. And the reason being is that I'm confident, and I remain confident to this day, that you can have both, that you can achieve both. It's a longer road. You've got to cover your bases. You've got to do everything right. And there's a common language in our area, which is this notion of marginal gains, which was coined a fair few years ago now. And this notion that, rather than make 100% improvement in one area, make 1% improvement in 100 areas. It has to be said, this is nothing new. This isn't something that was invented by Brailsford. even though he brought that to the forefront. This is a mindset and a practice that's happened in health and sport for decades. This notion of you're looking for those details that make a difference. And I think when you take a holistic approach to athlete development and you start to consider those key physiological as well as physical components and what it is you can have an influence on, and you start to look at the devil in the detail, well, the area of nutrition is rife because there is so much we can do well, and yet there is so much that people get wrong. So a lot of the time, you're going to work correctively. You're going to start to impact on those negative behaviors. Look at what we need to reduce, look at what we need to eliminate. And they're kind of like the more crude, easy wins. The nuanced part, the art of it, is then saying, well, what does the human environment need, not just to survive, but to thrive? How can we really amplify adaptation and recovery? How can we make it so that the individual is so physiologically and nutritionally robust that they can not only just cope with what they're doing, but they can optimize it. They can get the very best from what it is that they're doing. And that's led us down so many pathways that you'll probably be familiar with, this notion of protein synthesis and how much protein a person should consume on a daily basis based on that sense of activation and recovery. Carbohydrate ingestion, how much we need to fuel the activity that we do. Fat, how we can use that as a metabolic energy pathway, and also the certain types of fats, everything from the ones we don't want, trans fats, less of saturated fats, a primary focus on the polyunsaturated, the monounsaturated fats, and really the crux of it, those polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are vital, not only to performance, but also to our overall health, because they shape a huge aspect of who and what we are. So sadly, when we see diets and dietary shifts that have gone away from those types of foods as being a common feature, then there is something for us to get involved with and correct. And also it's an opportunity for us to get a win and address one of those many hundred areas that we want a 1% change in. And I think all too often, this is overlooked. It's overlooked. They are essential fats. Think about how many micros or macronutrients are described as essential. These are the essential fats. Our cellular status hinges off them, has a direct impact on our gut microbiota. And when we look at the research around the area, with the impact that having sufficient amounts of the marine-based omega-3s have with regards to recovery, adaptation, lowering of soreness related to participation in competition and training, in itself, it's earned its place within our key considerations when we start to look at the dietary needs of our athletes. So with that in mind, we have to consider what dietary changes we can make, what's realistic, what's achievable, and what's sustainable. And the fact is the food has changed. That's neither controversial nor sensational to say. Food has changed. People's palates have changed because of food changes. And so encouraging an athlete, an individual, to consume really good quality line-caught, wild, fatty fish 4, 5, 6 times a week, it's nigh on impossible. Nothing's impossible. There are those individuals you meet who do that, and it's brilliant and it should be applauded. For the vast majority, it's just so difficult to achieve. And that's why a specific product that addresses that need, like any type of supplementation, it should be excellent, and it should be addressing a real problem. It should be the solution. It should be an answer to a real equation. It should play its part and be essential, as in there's no better way to do it. And that's really where balance oil, Zinzino balance oil, finds its place. Fish oil doesn't work. We know that. There's a Cochrane consensus statement on it. Meta-analysis 2018. Fish oil doesn't work. And for all the reasons why fish oil doesn't work, balance oil does work. Key aspects of it, the omega-3 itself is still bound to a polyphenol. The polyphenol itself is an anti-inflammatory. Within that mix as well, we've got an essential component that supports the normal function of the immune system, which is the vitamin D, at a reasonable rate as well. So we've got this polyphenol, this high polyphenol count from the extra virgin olive oil, protecting and making sure that the omega-3 gets to the cell and does what it needs to do, survives the first and second pass to the stomach. We're getting that hit of vitamin D, which is not only essential with regards to our immune function when it comes to things like illness, disease, but it's essential when we look at our recovery from the stress that's related to the exercise that we engage in. So what we have is the answer, This is exactly it. The whole breadth of the research that is now catching up in this area is recognizing that this is the mechanism that makes the difference. It's ecologically sustainable, it's effective, and it's vital. So really, when we start to consider, when we go right down to brass tacks and we think of what the individual needs to perform optimally, to recover optimally, and therefore to be able to train sufficiently to achieve those outcomes, this needs to be every bit as much of a key consideration of those 3 indicative macros.